We are live.
Okay. Hello and welcome to another sales chat. My name is John Golden, Pipeliner CRM and SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine down here in San Diego. And Martha Neumeister is joining me, also my colleague from SalesPOP, and she is in Vienna, Austria, as usual. She'll be looking after the Twitter chat today, so it's hashtag SalesChats. I encourage you to get involved, ask questions, answer the questions yourself, get involved in a bit of a dialogue, and if something interesting comes up, Martha will interrupt us. And today, our guest, who is in Manhattan, in New York, is Catherine Brinkman. How are you doing, Catherine?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. And I thought I'd let Catherine introduce herself rather than me do it. I thought I'd let you introduce yourself.
Sounds good. My name is Catherine Brinkman, and I always joke that I've been in sales since I was in first grade. Basically, I started with fundraising, asking my parents for their Rolodex to call, which is cold calling. So I kind of grew up with that mindset, and I just ended up making sales a career based on that. And cold calling really is my favorite part of sales. I enjoy the hunt. I enjoy meeting new people, fixing their challenges if they have one and I have a solution for them.
Excellent. And guess what we're going to talk about today? Of course, we're going to talk about cold calling because, you know, year after year, cold calling is still an issue. It's still something that, frankly, it's a huge part of sales, but people dread it. And now with a lot of different technologies and different methodologies like inbound and everything, people have found 1,001 excuses to be even less inclined to do cold calling. So one question I wanted to start off with, Catherine, is this idea. I mean, people have kind of conflated maybe or mixed up cold calling and social selling, and they're thinking, well, they're both really the same thing. So, I can fire off some emails, or I can go into LinkedIn, and I'm cold calling.
You're social selling. So in reality, there really isn't such a thing as cold calling anymore because of the internet. It just, everything becomes warm if you put enough time into it. So with social selling, it makes it a lot easier because you can go on LinkedIn, you can look at annual reports, and you can notice trends going on with those specific industries that you're targeting. So to that point, yes, there still is that point where you have to just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to treat this as cold calling. It's changed a bit since the 90s, but it's still something where they don't know who I am. I have added information, which is a benefit to me. Let's figure out who they are and how can I connect with them.
Yeah, because it seems to me that, a lot of people kind of take it only so far, especially because, let's face it, you can convince yourself that you're social selling or cold calling because you're doing lots of activities, but in reality, you're kind of stopping short of really putting yourself out there, right? And actually doing the extra work to add the value.
Exactly. It takes about 7 touches to actually close the deal. So one of the things that people should think about is you don't have to sit and think about, I'm going to get a cold call, I'm going to get a lead and close it. That's not the focus. The focus is just to get the meeting. That's your win. So that can help entice people and take some of that pressure off of cold calling, just trying to get a meeting. That's it.
So that's a good point, right? Is sort of setting different targets for what you're trying to do, as opposed to just going, saying, well, I've made a lot of touches now and they haven't sent me a check, so I should just move on. So what's your approach?
Well, I like to sit and do 90 contacts. I like to block my time. So I'll do 90 dials, and I know statistically that 90 dials will get me to 9 people. 9 people is going to lead me to 3 meetings, and if I'm qualified and do my job right, I'm going to get 1 close. So it is a lot of work. You have to think of it as a game in a sense where you don't know what you're getting on the other end. There's been times when I've talked to people and they're completely not the right person who I should be talking to. And then I've said, hey, have you heard of this? And I'll end up getting a meeting to them, even though I had no idea who they were or their title, we're still interested.
Yeah, so that's you just mentioned something there about kind of treating it like a game, because that's the other thing, right? Is, as I alluded to at the beginning, is a lot of people, we don't like cold calling, and some people even like fear it. I mean, it
Right,
makes them wake
right.
up in the middle. I mean, even tenured people, it could still make them wake up in the middle of the night in a cold
Sure.
sweat, the thought of cold calling. So how do you? So your idea of a game, but how do you turn it into something that's not so negative? Because you can't succeed at something if you have a negative attitude to it, right?
Right, and I think people are fearful because they don't know who they're going to be speaking to. And there definitely is a mindset between that hunter and then that farmer. There just is. Not one is better than the other. It's just kind of, again, the game. Do you like to talk to new people? Are you more outgoing? Do you care if someone's going to hang up on you? So if you have that mentality of, yes, I'm going to get hung up on, it's going to be a good hang up if I don't get cussed out for interrupting their day, that helps everything. And the fear factor, the more you know your products, the easier it should become to actually make those calls because you're targeting people. You're not just calling random people. There's a method to who you're speaking to, and you have an idea that they probably need what you're selling. So that should take some of the fear and those night sweats around 3 a.m. out of the equation.
Mhm. And the other part as well is, right. I mean, you're qualifying them as much as I mean, you're qualifying them, and you're trying to figure out if they're the right fit, as opposed to just trying to convince them that they're the right fit. Because there's nothing worse than going down a sales cycle with completely the wrong person.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's another part, was you got to approach it in sort of saying, my time and what I have to say is valuable. So I also need to make sure it's the right person.
Completely. And you're not just going to pick up the phone or write emails to write emails. You have to have a methodology and who you're targeting. Is there a specific industry? Is there a specific buyer type? That all then makes everything a lot easier. You are engaging with these people.
And so do you think that's a part of it too, is like when people sort of reluctantly engage in cold calling and they just kind of get a list and they say, well, it looks like all of these people have the right title, they're kind of in the right industry, and I'll just go.
Right.
And rather than doing the additional work, and yeah, if you get that list and you just go at that kind of superficial level, what's going to happen? You're probably going to like not be very successful.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in this day and age, titles don't mean anything anymore. It's pretty tricky. So even asking up front with that person, like, what do you actually do? There's nothing wrong with that with pre-qualification. And this really should be looked at as pre-qualification. People change jobs, names are wrong, but like I mentioned, you may be talking to someone that you thought was a different extension number. They end up being interested, and you just had no idea their name or their title. So
Yeah, I think
really,
I just think you've hit on a key thing there, though, about actually qualifying in terms of asking somebody what they actually do, because
really.
you're correct. In this day, and nowadays, I mean, sometimes people have the wackiest titles, right? And you'd never even associate them with, say that they could actually be the purchaser.
Right, right. And I'm sitting in Manhattan, but all majority of my life I've been in Silicon Valley, and some of those titles I just don't know what they are. So you have to ask, and that helps build the rapport up front. It kind of lightens that, oh, you're not just a salesperson, you're genuinely interested in what do I do. At the same time, as a salesperson, I am qualifying, I am figuring out a bit more about them, the company at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So, what's another way that people can get over this reluctance to cold call? And what do you say to people who, because a lot of people hide behind now and they say, "Oh, you see all these things. Oh, cold calling's dead. No more cold calling. It's all inbound, and it's other people like marketing should be driving everybody to you, and they should be like all warm leads, and life is wonderful, and the clouds are fluffy, and there's little bunnies jumping around." But that's not the reality for most business. So,
Yeah.
what do you say to people who kind of put forward that idea that cold calling is dead?
If people in sales like money, let's be honest, that is what it is. And you have to have that mindset that it really is a game. Yes, you have marketing. Yes, you have your own pipeline. But sometimes people that have larger enterprise sales, they're working on things from 6 months to a year before they actually close. What are you doing with that time?
Mhm.
Why not go ahead and work on building your pipeline even more? And just thinking of it again like a game, you don't know who you're going to talk to. Worst case scenario, they hang up on you. Okay, fine. Best case scenario, they're your next big fish.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, you're right about putting all your eggs in one basket, like with that big deal maybe you've been working on. Because I
Right.
mean, I'm sure
Right.
you've had the experience. I've had the experience, unfortunately, of accompanying a salesperson many years ago who'd been working on a deal for nearly a year. It was a $3 to $4 million deal, and asked me to come in for the day the contract was to be signed. We arrived at the place, and the guy said, "Oh, I just got fired."
And see that.
I
That
mean,
happens though. It happens.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And for some people that are working with procurement, I recently just had everything was signed, sealed, and delivered, verbal. Next week, when I was following up, the person in procurement left the company. The new person was like, "We're not going to hire her." No. So it definitely does happen. So, like you said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So just view that as how many eggs can you put in your basket instead of thinking of it negatively.
Yeah, and obviously, like you set aside a certain amount of time because it does become, let's face it, we like to do the things that are fun and
Yeah.
make us feel better. We like to do those things. So if we're in a sales cycle with somebody and everything's going well, we're going to put a lot of energy there. Or we've just sold to them and we're making sure that they're happy. We're going to put a lot of energy there. Putting the same amount of energy in and setting aside time for cold calling, maybe we push that to the side, but that's exactly what we shouldn't do, right?
Right. And it's again, it's kind of like, what are you doing with your day
Mhm.
when you're waiting on these big deals? Why not take that opportunity, define that buyer type, define what their actual need is, look at their competitors, call into those competitors and see, can you also use this? We're talking to company XYZ about this, and you have the same challenge. Go that approach.
hmm so obviously, when you're cold calling and you're prospecting in general, right, you get a lot of no's, right? I mean,
Right.
let's be honest. I mean, you get the majority of no's by far, the majority of no's, and that can be disheartening, obviously. But how do you reorient yourself towards the no's so they're not as devastating?
So again, it's a game. So instead of tallying my yeses, I'll tally how many no's did I get. You just have to flip the game. It really comes down to that. And going with a mindset, literally going with a mindset that you're going to hear no. And that really does take a lot of the blows of your ego out because you go in with that, okay, I'll probably get hung up on. I'm not going to get the right person. This is just going to be 90 minutes of my life. Can sit for 90 minutes and bang this out. Like the other great thing is when you're using email, because that definitely does work. PM
hmm
on social media works, LinkedIn as well. There's no interaction really. You're just typing. There's no
hmm
human at that point interaction. So maybe they'll get back to you, maybe they won't. It doesn't matter because it's just like ether. It's just there. You're not going to get hurt by it.
hmm Right. And obviously, I mean, it's still very much I mean, it's a targeted game, but it's still very much a numbers game too, right?
Totally. So that's why I tally the number of no's rather
hmm
than the yeses.
Yeah, it's funny. I was interviewing somebody recently, actually, Lee Kenton, and he had this great thing where he said, if I'm prospecting all day and I get nothing, he goes, what I do is I say to myself, okay, if I get nothing today, I will reward myself with a movie tonight. If I get something today, well, that'll be the reward for me, and I'll celebrate that with ice cream or something. And
Perfect.
he said at the end of the day, at least he can go, oh well, I tried my hardest, nothing happened, but I get to watch a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part is the one something he raised. I think this is an also is it's okay to be disheartened. Just own it. Maybe wallow it in it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then pick yourself up, smack yourself
Totally.
upside the head, and get on with it again. Right?
That's the piece I think people forget is they view that they didn't close a deal in that moment as a failure when it really isn't. Again, the goal is to get the meeting. Even if you dialed 100 people, you got one meeting, that's your win.
hmm
Maybe it
And
is I set that goal of 100 calls and ice cream at the end of the day is my win.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously, it's that case of like figuring out, as you have figured out. I mean, you said at the beginning, you have, if I do 90 calls, I get X, 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 and X, right? Obviously, it's important to figure out what that is for you, because then I mean, what happens if you give up at 60 calls, right?
Right, exactly, exactly. So it is about calculating your pipeline. And for people that are doing both the hunter and gatherer,
Mhm.
then you probably don't need to cold call as much. Whereas if you're just starting your career and you're not inheriting accounts, then your call volume outbound is going to be a lot higher. So it
Mhm.
is really understanding that percentage of time you should be spending on it. And also, again, do you want to put in the extra hours? Maybe you want to put in an extra 5 hours a week, potentially make an extra 100 grand. You know what I mean? It just depends on where you're at in your mindset and money wise, really.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, so a lot of it is that it's really down to you, that you have to own it. If you're in this business and this is what you do, then you have a decision to make. Am I prepared to put in the work? As you say, am I prepared to even put in the extra work?
Right, right. It does come down to being financially motivated.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
and there's an interesting. I was watching something recently. Chuck Norris, the martial arts and movie star. He runs this. He runs this program with kids, right? And he said that how he teaches underprivileged kids and how he teaches them to overcome obstacles is he says to them is if you come up against an obstacle and you're okay, you've gone through a few obstacles and you're ready to quit. He says, what if that's the last obstacle?
mm-hmm.
What if you knew later that you quit and that was the last obstacle?
Right,
And
right.
so and I think this, and I was thinking about that, and I said, well, I think that translates here very much so because, as you say, if maybe you've made 90 calls, maybe 10 more calls, and maybe you've targeted 100, but at 80 you're like, oh, I'm sick of this. This isn't going well. But maybe the next 20 calls hold a nugget.
And there's nothing wrong with taking a walk, getting up,
Mhm.
walking around for 10 minutes, coming back and doing those extra 20 dials. Yeah, totally. It really does. I mean, it comes down to everything in life, right? Like, how much are you going to go that extra 10%?
Mm-hmm. So, in your experience, what has, even over the last couple of years, what has proven more successful for you, or what has kind of evolved or changed in the way you approach the game?
I really do focus on industry. So I
Mhm.
understand more about what are the key issues. And as I start to dial into that industry and talk to people, I hear the different pain points. Then I'll tailor my response and my value summary to those pain points. I can really narrow it in a lot more.
Yeah, and I think that's another key thing for the viewers and listeners today is that idea of industry, because I do think that buyers, well, not so much expect, but if you can demonstrate a greater level of understanding of their business and understanding of their industry and understanding of business in general, it'll stand out. Because remember, once upon a time, let's face it, a lot of salespeople prided themselves on not knowing anything really about business. They're just salespeople.
Right.
I don't think you can get
Not
away
at
with that.
all. No. I mean, that's the key point is that buyers are a lot more savvy today because of the internet and all the different material that's out there. So we as salespeople need to match that and be even savvier and really have a strong understanding, know who the key players are. And then also within our organizations, if you're in a larger organization, someone could be working with one of those potential clients with a completely different service. You're still in there. Understanding that point is key.
Hmm. So what do you do to make yourself get deeper into an industry and sort of be able to talk the talk? What do you do to prepare yourself?
There's YouTube, there's Twitter, but I also go to their websites and I'll look
Yeah.
at their annual reports. You can be on earnings calls.
Mhm.
That's a really, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time. Definitely, I think some people do get bogged down in the whole doing pre-approach work on a cold call. I recommend 5-10 minutes. If it's a big fish, and I'll use Cisco Systems as an example, I would sit on their earnings calls because they would literally go through each department and allocate time to talk about what was going on, products that were coming down the pipeline. They would also use people's names. They would mention people by name, which I then took notes, figure
Mhm.
out who they were. So if you want to go after the big fish, it is doing a little bit more of that extra work. And if you are just dialing, going to notice the trends, Google News even, just put in whatever the company is and hit that news section and stuff will come up.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. And I think obviously doing the extra bit of work and really kind of going a little deep into it, because there's nothing worse than somebody goes, "Oh, hey, I saw you sent out a press release last night about X, Y, or Z," and they go, "Yeah," and they start talking about it, and you have no idea what it really is about. I mean, you
Exactly.
have to go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
And I like that idea of even YouTube and that, because I have found, I've worked in a number of different industries over the years, and it really does matter if you learn the language of that industry.
Very much so.
I mean, it's not going to win you the deal, but it's certainly going to get you involved in the conversation if you refer to things in the right way and people think that, yeah, maybe you actually understand what's going on.
Completely. To tailor your value summary to their actual acumen is so key.
So, what are some other things that you've learned over the last few years? I mean, focus on an industry is a great one for people to think about. What are some other things that you have done recently that have really helped you?
It really is just coming up with a list beforehand. So if you want to go after grocers, I know that's something I'm currently working on. You
Mhm.
go to a different trade association website and they'll list all of the people that you should be talking to. So that's something where I do my research, but I pick where are some names and phone numbers that are easy for me to access. I will spend maybe 5 minutes. I don't spend a lot of time on people's websites because the reality is you're probably not going to get that person. um, I also don't leave voicemails. I don't feel like people listen to them. I'm not going to get a call back. So I will not leave it unless it is for a CEO and I get through that gatekeeper. Then I will leave it. The other thing that I really focus on is getting to know the gatekeeper. It can
Mhm.
end up being your best friend. And if you treat them poorly, they're going to see your number and just hit delete and you're not even going to get through. So those are some things that I think people don't pay attention to, that when they do, um, organizing your time wisely. And again, just really having that mindset of this is only going to be 90 minutes of my life. And I think I'm very fortunate in the fact that I like to talk to people.
Mhm.
I think one of my challenges is you maybe not be the right buyer type, but I'm still just going to talk to you and see, what's going on, which isn't making money. So it is just actually liking people. It sounds silly, but can't see the dollar signs right away. Doesn't work.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it. Interesting. I like that. So, just talk to me a little bit more about what you just said about the fact that you don't leave voicemails. So, what do you do? Do you continue to call until you get the person?
I do. I do. So if it's someone that I really want, again, you have your cell phone. You can block your number. You can call from different numbers. And that's if I know that they're around. If I've talked to the gatekeeper and they mention, yes, they're in the office today, then I will do that. But normally, I will call once a week, follow up with an email. The voicemail, people talk too fast, people don't call back, they just hit delete. And it's 45 seconds to a minute per voicemail. That is defeating to me. If
Hmm.
I'm doing that and all I get through is, 60 dials in my allocated time, that makes me feel bad. So I just skip that part. Do follow up emails at the end, but not a voicemail.
So that's a good point to people as well, as we sort of finish up here, is be conscious of your time, right? I mean, you could leave voicemails for everybody, as you said. Maybe it's a minute of your time. Maybe then at the end of the week you could discover that that's hours that you've wasted and
Yeah,
nobody's called you back. So,
right.
being conscious of your time. So, in the last few minutes, Catherine, we always like to ask guests on this: what's your power tip? What do you do to set yourself up for success every day?
You know what? You just have to go into it with the mindset that someone's going to say yes and you're going to get one meeting somewhere, and that's my goal of the day. Also, I mean, you really do. Most of us on SalesPOP are people that have experience
Mhm.
and we're trainers, so we do like that business part of seeing people grow. So that's cool. Like I just got a text earlier today about someone that I helped with their business plan, and she now just made an extra $2,000 in 2 weeks by having it organized. That's a win for
Wow.
me.
Yeah, that's a huge win. I mean, just think of that. I mean, that's probably a big percentage increase on that person, and now
She's a
they've got.
little bakery. It's pretty cool
Yeah,
to have
yeah.
her go from very little, not even tracking, to have her tracking and texting me like, look what I did. That's what helps me make these cold calls.
Excellent. So I think that's great, and I think that's a fantastic note to end on, because what you basically just said there is what makes it worthwhile at the end of the day is that your customer was successful.
Exactly. We're trying to
Not
solve problems.
Yeah, exactly. Not just that you made the sale, but your customer was actually ultimately successful. Okay, Catherine, how can the viewers find out more about you?
You can go to bhyconsulting.com, or you can also find me on Twitter at bhyconsulting.
Excellent. This has been a great sales chat. The time has flown by. My name again is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine, Pipeliner CRM. Catherine Brinkman, BHY Consulting, so bhy.com in Manhattan, New York, and Martha, my colleague, who was in Vienna, Austria. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we'll see you all again for another sales chat soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.